High above the Pacific Ocean, northeast of New Guinea, a single Allied American plane cruised through the night sky on patrol on January 10, 1943. Below, the moonlit waves seemed peaceful, despite the Pacific Theater being in full swing for over a year. Suddenly, the pilot's eyes caught a glimpse of movement, a massive dark silhouette cutting through the water. It was USS Argonaut, the United States Navy's largest submarine, fresh from attacking a Japanese escort, part of a large convoy. As the plane drew closer, the crew realized the true scope of the scene unfolding below. Argonaut was not alone. Now, a formation of Japanese destroyers surrounded her, closing in like predators. Flashes of light erupted in the water. Explosions from depth charges sent shockwaves through the sea. The plane's crew could do nothing but watch as Argonaut was pounded time and time again by shells. The submarine's bow broke the surface at a sharp angle, a sign of severe damage. The pilots watched in quiet shock as the worst loss of life in American submarine combat history unfolded in the waves below. In late November 1941, the submarine USS Argonaut, under the leadership of Lieutenant Commander Stephen G. Barchett, left Pearl Harbor to patrol Midway Island, accompanied by fellow submarine USS Trout. Soon, Barchett and his 105 officers and enlisted men had more than enough problems to worry about underwater. After patrolling south of Midway Atoll for days, by the afternoon of December 7th, everyone was busy fighting small internal electrical fires. Without air conditioning and constant all-day dives, the humidity inside Argonaut skyrocketed. Condensation dripped into electrical wiring, causing short circuits and disabling nearly half her major systems. The submarine Argonaut was an old beast. Laid down in 1925, she was the largest submarine built by the United States Navy and would remain so until the dawn of the nuclear era. Designed for long endurance more than high speed, at 381 feet long and displacing 4,080 tons submerged, Argonaut fit the bill. She was also the only United States submarine ever to be designed as a mine layer. At her stern, she was equipped with two 40-inch mine-laying chutes and handling equipment, with space for up to 60 mines. For more conventional submarine operations, she featured four 21-inch torpedo tubes located at the bow. Additionally, Argonaut was uniquely armed with two 6-inch deck guns, the biggest ever mounted on an American submarine. After sunset on the 7th, Captain Barchett ordered Argonaut to surface and air out the old and stuffy boat. As soon as she was out, they received the awful news. Pearl Harbor had just been attacked by the Japanese. The United States was officially at war. Floating along the ocean's surface at 9:45 p.m., Lookout spotted what looked and sounded like gunfire west of Midway. Worried it could be a follow-up Japanese invasion force, the massive yet cumbersome submarine moved at maximum speed, only 15 knots, to investigate the scene. Once there, what she found were two Japanese ships, either big destroyers or small cruisers, bombarding Midway with their main batteries. Argonaut then maneuvered to make a submerged torpedo attack toward the ships, later identified as Imperial Japanese destroyers Ushio and Sazanami. However, before she could do it, one of the destroyers saw her dive and quickly headed in her direction. With the attack attempt spoiled, Argonaut went deep within seconds, while the Japanese ships crisscrossed and circled her likely position, trying to locate her. For the rest of the night, she had to remain underwater. This meant that condensation issues resumed as her dehumidifiers failed, and the electrical fires from earlier in the day returned. This time, it was worse, as at least 3 crewmen in this damp environment caught a high fever. Amidst the sweltering heat and suffocating humidity, with the crew weary, some sick, and all on edge, Captain Barchett convened with his top officers to decide whether to return to Pearl Harbor. Just then, as if fate intervened, President Roosevelt mentioned Argonaut in a stirring radio speech. The news crackled through the submarine, infusing the beleaguered crew with a morale boost. With this, Barchett and his men decided to stay on patrol, ready to face whatever came next. At dawn, the massive submarine surfaced to recharge her batteries at Midway, and while the destroyers were gone, Japanese air cover proceeded to bomb her time and time again, but were not successful. By December 1941, Argonaut was considered more than ineffective. According to Rear Admiral Richard H. O'Kane, quote, "If a fleet boat were stripped of 1 battery, 2 engines, 6 torpedo tubes, and could use no more than 15 degrees of rudder, she would still have greater torpedo attack and evasion ability than Argonaut." Still, This ancient and clumsy submarine had just made the first attack approach of the entire Pacific War. A week later, believing his submarine to be ineffective in battle, Lieutenant Commander Barchett decided against engaging a group of 4 detected destroyers. This decision led to a heated argument with the executive officer and an eventual return trip to Pearl Harbor. Once there, after an inspection, the U.S. Navy agreed that Argonaut was a lot more than impractical in submarine combat. Yet, a ship so large could not be wasted, especially not during the earliest stages of the Pacific theater. The answer to what to do with the clunky USS Argonaut came on January 22, 1942, when she was ordered to sail to Mare Island Naval Shipyard for a major overhaul, to be transformed into a troop transport submarine. At Mare Island, her hard-to-work-with mine-laying gear was removed entirely, converting the space into an area capable of carrying about 120 troops, a unique transformation in American naval history. In addition to a smaller auxiliary diesel generator, Argonaut was also equipped with a torpedo data computer, new electronics, radar, a sonar suite, updated communication gear, and a modified conning tower to boost her combat abilities. To top it off, she was also fitted with 2 external stern torpedo tubes and 2 stern deck stowage tubes, although some photos seemingly contradict this, as they showed she lacked external torpedo tubes on the bow. After a few months, this one-of-a-kind ship, once America's first mine-laying submarine, was now the nation's first transport submarine, and given the designation APS-1 for this purpose. However, most of the time, the bogus number SS-166 for a regular sub was painted on her to confuse Imperial Japanese Navy intelligence. This seemingly harmless decision would cause unforeseen and unfortunate consequences. After months of arduous training, from April to July 1942, Argonaut was redirected to the South Pacific in August, now under the command of Lieutenant John Reeves Pierce, a leader recognized for his courageous and aggressive approach to combat. Sailing under the order of Admiral Chester W. Nimitz alongside USS Nautilus, also recently modified for troop transport, this duo of unique submarines was tasked with a special mission to transport and land Marine raiders on Macon Island in the Gilberts. The elite Marine raiders, led by Colonel Evans F. Carlson, were headed to the island as a diversion from the incoming invasion of Guadalcanal and to relieve pressure on American forces stranded there. Early on August 8th, Argonaut and Nautilus set sail with 120 men of AB Company, 2nd Raider Battalion. Conditions aboard Argonaut were harsh, with most of the Marines becoming seasick during the week-long journey to Macon. At 3:30 a.m. on August 16th, the Marines landed using rubber rafts in rough weather. Seawater quickly swamped their outboard motors, forcing them to paddle to shore. As they approached, Japanese searchlights illuminated the sea, revealing a well-defended area with snipers hidden in the trees and machine gun nests ready to fire. Despite the fierce opposition, the Marines pressed on, and against all odds, the raiders achieved most of their objectives. By August 18th, the Marine raiders had lost 30 men in the assault, primarily during the shore approach, and many were wounded. Their radio stations, fuel, and supplies were also mostly destroyed. However, their mission was successful, as they inflicted significant damage on the Japanese, even if it didn't fully divert their attention from Guadalcanal. At midnight on August 18, 1942, the surviving Marines returned to the submarines, enduring another uncomfortable week-long journey back to Pearl Harbor. On November 24th, Argonaut, still under the command of the bold John Reeves Pierce, departed Pearl Harbor for the South Pacific. She'd been reassigned to Captain James Fife Jr.'s Task Force 42 in Brisbane. Her new mission was landing reconnaissance and raiding troops for General MacArthur in the Solomons and New Guinea, areas dense with Japanese activity. As if rehearsing for her new role, after dusk on December 5th, Argonaut, still slow as ever but with great men aboard her, surfaced near Ocean Island west of the Gilberts and unleashed a barrage on Japanese positions with her 6-inch guns. However, on December 6th, new orders came through, and she broke off her journey to Brisbane and headed for Espiritu Santo, where she was topped off and replenished 3 days later. Around December 27th, Lieutenant Commander Pierce received fresh orders from Captain Fife. This time, their destination was the perilous waters between Bougainville and New Britain. This was always a dangerous area, being so close to the heavily fortified Japanese bases at Rabaul and the Shortlands. While the situation remained dire for the Japanese on Guadalcanal, where the Imperial Army was barely holding its ground, the battle on New Guinea was even more desperate. On January 2, 1943, following a prolonged and unexpectedly expensive campaign, Buna, situated on the north coast of Papua, ultimately fell to General MacArthur's forces. Old but mighty, Argonaut was also making a game effort. That same day, she attacked a Japanese vessel, Eban Maru, severely damaging her in the Bismarck Sea. The powerful Imperial Japanese Navy's 51st Division was also on its way. While it was too late to save Buna, the convoy was sent to reinforce the Japanese fortress at Leh, northwest of Buna. On January 5th, 5 transports, Brazil Maru, Nichiryu Maru, Clyde Maru, Shifuku Maru, and Miyoko Maru, escorted by 5 destroyers, were already on their way. Magic, the Allied code-breaking effort, identified the convoy on January 9th, and Captain Fife quickly ordered Argonaut and the Tambor-class USS Grampus to intercept. For reasons known solely to Captain Fife, this old and slow submarine was sent to intercept a heavily defended convoy. Some speculated that he may have forgotten Argonaut was solely a troop transport, seeing the SS-166 on his chart and assuming she was a typical fleet submarine. Still, a final message from Argonaut arrived in the early hours of January 10, 1943, with Lieutenant Commander Pierce acknowledging the intercept order. A while later, she spotted the convoy of 5 freighters escorted by the destroyers. Within seconds, she successfully hit one of them with a torpedo. Above, an Allied Army aircraft flying overhead by chance was the only other friendly witness to what happened next. From its vantage point, the aircraft crew watched as Argonaut maneuvered into position for another attack, her silhouette stark against the dark waters. Before she could launch her torpedoes, the Japanese convoy sprang into action, counterattacking with ruthless precision. In a heartbeat, Argonaut's bow breached the surface at a sharp, unnatural angle, a telltale sign of a devastating depth charge strike. The crew in the sky could only look helplessly in horror as the Japanese destroyers closed in, encircling the wounded giant. Once trapped, the Japanese unleashed a relentless barrage of shells at point-blank range, hammering Argonaut with explosive force until the submarine began to slip beneath the waves, consumed by the dark depths of the Pacific. At that moment, the USS Argonaut was no more. A total of 105 officers and men went down to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, alongside the old Argonaut, marking the single worst loss of life for any World War II-era American submarine. As the U.S. Navy's top brass investigated the terrible incident, it did not take long for the Empire to brag about its victory via a radio report. The loss of Argonaut had a devastating effect on Captain Fife's submarine force. Specifically remade to carry out special missions like making covert supply runs, landing reconnaissance, and other raiding troops, she was a unique piece in his arsenal. Without her, those missions had to be handled by other submarines that were badly needed on the front lines, where Argonaut would have been ineffective. Other vessels had to make 2 trips, whereas Argonaut would have needed only 1. Overall, USS Argonaut won 2 battle stars for her World War II service. After the January 10, 1943 incident, Captain Pierce was credited with damaging a Japanese destroyer, but the decision remains controversial to this day.